We need to ban billionaires. We can't have a democratic society with them. Some will say, Canada, the United States, other countries like that, we have billionaires and we're a democracy, aren't we? Well, I would say, well, not really. When we really talk about a democracy, I think we need to really look beyond just the ballot box and really examine our workplaces and the general structure of the economy. But even within our formal political democracy, we see how billionaires can just have such a corrupting influence. Not only can billionaires like Rupert Murdoch and Jeff Bezos and others just buy up media, just buy up newspapers and TV stations and radio stations and just use those as their, potentially at least, as their political soapboxes. But you have people like Howard Schultz, who has literally no political experience, who has no merit for even being considered to run for president. But because he's a billionaire, people are giving it at least some modicum of credibility. That's the only reason. There's literally no other reason you could think that he could run for president. This isn't even like Michael Bloomberg, who, has at least some kind of political career, as a mayor of a large, American city. Schultz has none of that, but he's given that credibility because he's a billionaire. Billionaires really distort our process, because whether it's through direct donations or whether it's through the use of media or whether it's through the use of third-party donations, billionaires can use their political voice in a way that dwarfs those of the regular people, and they use that with their wealth. They do that with their wealth, and it's unacceptable. And some people will say, well, billionaires, they give a lot to charity. Billionaires are very charitable. At least some of them are. They'll point to Bill and Melinda Gates, for instance. But I want to kind of underline just how, problematic that is, because the reality is that in part they're able to be charitable because they have billions of dollars that in many ways they didn't fully earn. That, and we'll get into this, but they have billions of dollars that wasn't taxed appropriately. And because of that, they can sort of just give it away. And while it's nice that they're giving their money away, often it's to serve their particular interests and goals and ideologies and worldviews. Sometimes that directly serves their businesses, but sometimes that serves what they as individuals sort of want the world to look like. But when we're talking about such amounts of wealth, that effectively means that their charity can subvert the democratic will, that can subvert our collective priorities, what we as societies want to see. That charity can be nice things at times, but it could be the use of that money to sort of subvert public education through the use of charter schools. And that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. We need to realize that charity is not the solution to our key problems, and that only collective action, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally, can solve the core issues we face as a people and as a species. And going even beyond that further, we have to look at the fact that billionaires, again, they epitomize a society in which equality of opportunity really isn't a thing. The whole point of countries like Canada and the United States, these new world countries, was that they were lands of opportunity, where all men were born and created equal, where they didn't have special privileges, where the titles and nobilities of Europe were a thing of the past. And the reality is that while those titles don't formally exist, we have, like FDR called, we have economic royalists, people with such immense, such obscene wealth that they can pass it on for generations upon generations, that they can build monuments to themselves and to their families, that they can control political and financial and industrial and cultural institutions through that wealth. And they can pass it on to their children, who through no merit of their own will instantly have a leg up on regular people. Think about this. I mean, even the differences between being born into a lower income and an upper middle income family are sometimes substantive, but think of the opportunities that exist for the children of billionaires and of multi-millionaires, and you will realize that there is no equality of opportunity within societies that allow the uber rich to exist. There is none. And finally, if you look to our workplaces, the reality there is that we want democracy, supposedly. We believe in democracy. But in our workplaces, we see largely autocracy. We see totalitarianism, especially in places where unions don't exist. And some of the world's biggest billionaires fight unions with all of their might. People like Jeff Bezos, because they realize that their billions are built in part upon the suffering of their workers, upon the exploitation of their workers. That's just the reality. And unions are a bulwark to that because they democratize the workplace. So all of these billionaires who say they believe in the democratic process, who say they believe in freedom and liberty, don't want their workers to have the right of free association. They don't want their workers to have the right to meet with them on an equal footing, at the bargaining table. They don't want that. They want autocracy in the workplace. And that's not a democratic society. It's not a democracy if you get to mark an X every 2 or 4 or 6 or however many years. It's a democracy when the society as a whole has democratic structures. And that goes into the workplace. And that goes into who owns, frankly, the means of production, at least on a large scale. Really, at the end of the day, a lot of this will go down to the fact that there's a philosophical disagreement between those who feel that billionaires have earned what they have and those who don't. And I'm in the latter camp. I think that the billionaire class and the multi-millionaire class has earned only a tiny, infinitesimal fraction of what they actually have. And that much of the value they supposedly created for shareholders or for society or what have you was created through collective means throughout the centuries and generations and millennia of human effort. As Isaac Newton said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Our discoveries, our advancements, our triumphs, our learning, these did not happen because of individuals. They happened because of all of us. Either directly in the sense that to develop, software, to develop new ways of thinking, you need multiple people doing the work to bring different perspectives, or even more broadly, how for much of human history, the supposed great men, to make the discoveries and achievements that they did, required millions upon millions of people to toil, to farm, to do all the sorts of things that allowed these intellectual classes to exist. And in many ways, we still have that today. People cook the food, people do the cleaning, people do the farming, people do the resource extraction, people do the logistical work. Governments do much of this work. And so private companies and private individuals at times will make profits off of it. But at the end of the day, much of that value is collectively created and should be collectively controlled. And that's just the reality, in my view at least. And I think the existence of billionaires is a distortion of how our value is created and how our value is distributed. So in my view, at least, again, I don't think billionaires are compatible with democracy. I think they're a policy failure. I think they're a betrayal of the equality of opportunity principle. I think they're a betrayal of democracy in our workplaces and the economy. I think they can use their power to distort the very understandings of our democratic system as it exists even in the political realm. And their excuse of charity and philanthropy doesn't cut it in an age where, in a sense where we need to take that wealth and apply it through the collective and democratic means. There is no way around this. We can have democracy, or we can have billionaires. We can't have both, and I choose democracy.